Join the movement. Go all electric with Pure Electric.
Sue and Jim came to us wanting to design a holiday house for their retirement, a long weekender where they could get away from Melbourne and spend time revegetating this beautiful landscape. They wanted it to be modest, but capture the panoramic views, particularly Mount Piper to the east, and they needed it to be self-sufficient. Elemental describes this house's relationship with the forces of nature, but also speaks to a desire for simplicity, an expression of being self-sufficient in this extremely harsh environment. Sue and Jim bought this block of former farmland in 2017, located at a place called High Camp, an hour and a half north of Melbourne on Tungarong country. After generations of farming, weeds and non-Indigenous flora had taken over this land. But Sue and Jim had this admirable aspiration to regenerate the land with native vegetation. This site had an amazing energy about it, which we felt on our first site visit. It's raw and windswept and exposed to the harshest of Australia's elements. Blistering sun, strong winds, and the ever-present threat of bushfire. Perched up on this ridge, the views are spectacular. But with the removal of trees from farming over the years, you do feel very exposed, and you immediately crave shelter from the sun and wind in an almost primal way. But this exposure to the elements actually heightens your senses and musters a real spirit of adventure. With Sue being a travel writer, we wanted to capture that sense of freedom and the minimalism of having only what you need, which is synonymous with going off-grid, both literally and figuratively. We wanted the home to be quiet and simple, a pure geometric form with a minimal palette of materials. The form responds to that desire for shelter, using a big roof with deep eaves to provide protection. The home is low-slung, bracing itself against the strong winds, which are the equivalent of low-level cyclonic with gusts of up to 40 metres per second. It's finished with the beautiful timber that will age and settle into the landscape, and 5 years on, with the landscape beautifully establishing around it, it's doing just that. The floor plan is a simple 10 by 10 metre square. Having explored a few different forms and layouts, we found this form would enable more rooms to benefit from the passive solar while framing views to the east. One end of this rectangular living space receives warming winter sun below those deep eaves, as does the bedroom adjacent. The southern end of the living space opens up to cooling summer breezes from the south. And the long side of this living space faces east towards the panoramic view of the sun rising over the valley with Mount Piper beyond. We researched the climate data for the site, including the windroses, and identified that even though the winds are extremely strong, we know that they only ever come from either the north or the south, never from the east or the west. So we could place a deck on either side of the house, knowing that one of them would always be sheltered by the building itself. The bedroom on the north side has a framed view of that only tree on the ridgeline. A relatively generous bathroom to the southwest is an ideal spot to relax at the end of the day, with this beautiful bathtub getting private views out towards the sunset. Sue and Jim were keen to keep the house modest, and so you don't find many modern conveniences. There's no dishwasher or a washing machine in the home. But that doesn't mean we did away with all of the comforts, such as that freestanding bar. And like a traveller having to reduce their luggage, sometimes having less actually increases your appreciation of what you do have. Keeping things simple, we use the singular material on the outside. The timber is spotted gum, which is a very dense and durable Australian hardwood. It even meets the requirements of the bushfire attack level rating of BEL 29. It doesn't need any maintenance and just goes grey gracefully over time, settling into its surrounds. There is a bit of a history of using corrugated iron in bush settings in reference to the rural vernacular, but we're not really interested in referencing colonial precedents. Instead, we're after an expression that feels elementally of this country. Inside, the timber will stay forever young, being protected from the elements. We wanted to emphasise that sense of shelter, so we opted for a more dark and moody palette. But the reflective sheen of the burnished concrete floor and the timber ceiling increase the ambient light and amplifies the views beyond while drawing your eyes out. The house is completely off-grid and uses passive design principles to help control internal temperatures. 24 solar panels on the roof in a 6 kilowatt system with 2 batteries provide sufficient power to get Sue and Jim through even the most overcast winter's day. Rainwater is collected and stored in a 10,000 litre tank for the home and a separate 20,000 litre tank for mandatory bushfire use. A single 5 kilowatt air conditioner can provide cooling on the hottest summer days and heating in addition to the wood fire to get you through those cold winter nights. The roof eaves are designed to be deep enough to keep out the high summer sun while still letting in that low winter sun to passively heat the space. High levels of insulation and double glazing all help maintain those comfortable internal temperatures for the majority of the year. There is something endearing about a little house taking on the elements, but it's actually the feeling that this house evokes when inside that makes it really special. You feel sheltered and protected, but also energised and inspired by those elements around you, which allows you to truly appreciate nature and the landscape you're in.